All right, good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. And welcome, everyone. Great to see everyone here this morning. Let's begin with the sponsor this morning, Le'iloi Nishmas Miriam Bas Avraham, Alav Shalom V'Shem Tov, Ben Shlomo Zichrono Liv Racha. So we thank our regular sponsor. And this morning, what I'd like to look at from the teachings of Rav Kook is really a way for all of us to prepare for the holiday of Shavuot. So we'll take a slight break this morning from Eretz Chayfetz, and what I'd like to share with you essentially are 10 teachings from Rav Kook about Talmud Torah, and that is our theme. That is what we're thinking about these days. Tomorrow night, Bezrat Hashem, we'll be bringing in, believe it or not, the Chag of Shavuot, Chag Matan Zman Matan Torotenu. And it's a time for all of us to think about Talmud Torah, and as we anticipate the night, the opportunity to learn over Shavuos, and that it should be a day which we're inspired, that we're mechazek ourselves in terms of our Torah learning. So I was thinking, what is it that is unique in the writings and the thought of Rav Kook in terms of the study of Torah? And many rabbis throughout the generations have spoken about the importance of study and different ideas around the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. And what is it that Rav Kook shares with us and is unique in his thought? So there is a beautiful sefer that was written many years ago by Rav Kook. It was actually not written as a sefer. He wrote a lot of notes and personal thoughts in what was called the Shmona Kavatzim. And his son, Ratzvi Yehuda Kook, he put together a sefer called Orot HaTorah, the Lights of Torah, Orot HaTorah. And in that book, in those many chapters, he speaks about his ideas, his thoughts about the study of Torah. And I'd like to study that with you and to see a number, as I said, I think in honor of the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments, I'd like to touch on 10 ideas this morning, 10 insights from Rav Kook about the topic of Talmud Torah. And just to kind of get us in the mood, so Rav Kook, he would spend the night teaching. He would teach from Sefer HaMitzvot of the Rambam, not that far from here in his yeshiva, Merkaz Harav, which is, you can see the study hall today. It's still there. It's still used. And he would spend the night. That would be his topic. And you would see his genius as he would go through the mitzvot, and wherever he would stop in the morning, he would say, next year we're going to pick it up from here and make our way through the 613 mitzvot of the Torah. So that was his custom, studying all night long and studying the Taryag mitzvot. Okay, so let's jump into the thought of Rav Kook in terms of Talmud Torah, and the first idea from Rav Kook, I think, is something that really is very unique to the writings of Rav Kook, and he writes the following. Let's begin with reading the words of Rav Kook. This is the first source. By the way, each source has a translation, and this is from a new translation. It just came out 2-3 months ago. Rabbi Hanan Morrison, who has done a lot of work in translating Rav Kook and presenting the teachings of Rav Kook, he just came out with a full translation of the Sefer Orot HaTorah. So we're going to be, we have that access to that as well, which is very helpful. So he writes the following. This is in Orot HaTorah, Tet Aleph, and you see at the very top, number 1, follow your interests and talents. Kol echad tzarich la'asok be'esek shelo. Rav Kook says that every person needs to find what is it that speaks to them. Bameh sheyesh lo al zeh hachana. What is it in your personality that you have a special talent or an interest in that? Ubiyichud hadavar noheg be'inyanei halimud. He says that's also true, and specifically in the area of Torah study as well. Now, I think that's a bit of a chiddush. It's a bit of a novel idea, not something that I've heard over the years, and not the traditional way that we study. We're told what we're supposed to study, certainly in like the yeshiva world, to spend our day studying Gemaras, studying halacha. But what happens when you have a certain affinity or a certain love for other areas of study? If it's studying Tanakh, if it's studying philosophy, if it's studying Musar, if it's studying Kabbalah, some of the more spiritual, mystical ideas of Judaism, what do you do with that? And Rav Kook says you should feel very comfortable and very good about the fact that if you have an inclination to a certain area of study, go for it, right? You enjoy it, right? That is, and I think he believes, or Kook believes, that your neshama actually is telling you and is giving you direction where you should be studying. Now, I don't think what Kook is suggesting it means that you don't study other areas, and everybody needs to have the foundation, everybody needs to find the balance. But where you have a certain interest, where you have a desire, where your personality kind of brings you to a certain part of Torah, you should do that. She'af al pi, and he writes the following, She'af al pi, second line in the middle, She'lepa'amim al yedei me'orot b'matzav yeh kashe la'adam lachazik b'meh shelibo chavetz, even though at times it might be difficult to follow that path. And I think what he might mean by that is you may be in a setting or in a, you might be in a yeshiva where that's not recommended, and yet you have a desire for a certain area of study, which is not the traditional area. He says, no, mikol makom tzarich sheyeh amitz. Says you should be very strong. V'lo ya'azov et ma shemachshir biyichud et rucho. That which your spirit, right, that which your personality brings you to, and your individuality, and that's what you find to be meaningful in Torah. He says that you should follow your interests, and you should spend time doing that. Now, I think he believes that on a very spiritual level, on a mystical level, that every neshama is different. There are neshamas, or there are personalities that they enjoy, Gemara study and more analytic study, and there are those that are more spiritual, and your personality, one's personality is more of a spiritual personality, or one that likes Chumash, one that likes Tanakh, one that likes philosophy. So all of that is available, and Rav Kook says, and again, this is, especially in his day, to write something like this and give this kind of direction, I think is a bit of a chiddush. There is a well-known work, Hasidic work, the Eglei Tal, the Sakachava Rebbe, and in the introduction to his work, the Eglei Tal, and sort of famous in the yeshiva world, he writes about the importance of enjoying your learning. And he writes that, we sort of have the impression that you're not supposed to enjoy learning that much. Right? It's supposed to be difficult. Memis atzmo, that you're supposed to kill yourself. Right? It should be a struggle when you're learning. So he writes that that's not necessarily the case. And if you find an area of learning that is uplifting, that's joyful, and if you're learning Torah in a joyful way, that's wonderful, and that's the ideal of Torah as well. So I think Rav Kook is alluding to that idea. Beautiful, beautiful. Exactly right. I think that's a Gemara that says that, right? Exactly. So the Gemara does say, the Gemara Bracha says that you only learn where you have a desire to learn that material. So that's, Rav Kook is emphasizing that idea. The founder of the Musar movement, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, so he would go community to community where he was preaching the idea that we need to learn more musar, ethical teachings. He felt that people were just learning and they weren't necessarily transforming who they were. We'll see that idea in just a moment. And there was a fellow that came up to Rabbi Yisrael Salanter after he gave the talk, and he said that I only have a half hour to learn every single day. What should I learn? So Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said to him, you should learn Musar, because if you learn Musar a half hour, you'll see that you have another half hour to learn as well. So I think Rav Kook is suggesting that as well. If we learn that which we love to learn, so then we're going to find more time to learn it. And if you're learning things that you don't really enjoy learning, so you're going to find every excuse in the world, right, not to learn. So this is idea number one from Rav Kook that he writes in Orot Torah. Second idea, this is Orot Torah Yud, Perek Yud, the Piska Gimel. And here he talks about the importance, or a sign, as it says here, that you should be studying Kabbalah. Now this is one of the breakthroughs of Rav Kook, is that he believed that there's great importance to studying Kabbalah. I know we grew up with the idea that you have to be at least 40 years old, you have to know all of Shas, all the poskim, before you touch the Kabbalah. But it seems that Rav Kook was not on board with that idea, that he believed that we should, and certainly people that have an interest in that area, that one should be doing that. And it's interesting, today there's more and more of that, of people that are studying Kabbalah. By the way, Kabbalah can also mean Hasidic texts. A lot of the Hasidic texts that we learn are really based on Kabbalistic ideas, and that was one of the breakthroughs of Hasidus, that they brought those Kabbalistic ideas to the Hamonam. So let's read the following from Rav Kook, the second idea. Keshem shemenuya ugemurahi. He says this is something that's proven. There's consensus on this. She'im ro'eh adam. If you see yourself, shahatzlachato hi beruchaniut haTorah ubechachmat ha'emet. If you see that your success, and I think what he means by success here is also growth. Your spiritual growth is through the ruchanios haTorah, which means the spiritual parts of Torah. Chachmat ha'emet, that's a term for Kabbalah. Chachma ha'emet means the true wisdom, the deeper wisdom. He's referring to Kabbalah. V'kashel lo ha'iyun ha'hilchoti. And you find it difficult just studying halacha. As chiyuvo ha'pnimi, then you have an obligation, an inner obligation, ligboa et ha'chelek ha'yoter ikari. You should spend more of your time bismano, with the time that you have, le'iyun hahu hamistagel lirucho. In other words, if you see that that's something that speaks to you, but there's another piece here as well, and that is hatzlachato, meaning the way that it affects you as a person. Look at the next paragraph. Ukamocha in imro adam. And you see yourself, shelimudo besitrei Torah mikadeshoto. You see that it sanctifies you, ma'aleh et rucho, that it uplifts you spiritually, umikarveu el gedusha, and it brings you closer to gedusha, the hargashas alev seichel panimi, with emotions of the heart, umehalimud hanigle, and when you learn nigla means what's galoi, meaning the open parts of Torah, the non-sisrei Torah. Einore tapriya nechman hazeh. If you're just studying halacha, and if you're just studying chumash or navi, whatever it may be, and you don't see that you are inspired by it, you don't see yourself being changed by it, you don't experience that you're uplifted by it, so then that he says no, and with that other study, the mystical study, you find that you are, so then you should spend more time in that. And by just studying that other material, you just remain the gas person that we are, like you're just, the physicality, and you haven't really become a more spiritual person. Margish berucho. Az mofet gamor. This is a clear sign. Shetikunohu belimud hachelak hazeh. Then you know that this is where your tikkun is to be found, right? That this is what's going to be best for you in terms of your spiritual growth. Shel or haTorah pnimi shel chachmat hamet. Okay. So this is interesting. And I think the point here is a very interesting point, and that is, which is very much what the Musar movement touched on as well, and that is, how is your learning affecting your personality? Right? We're not just here, this is not an academic exercise. We're not just here to learn information. Right? When we come to a SHIUR, when we're learning Torah, that should be something that affects us. So Rav Kook says, if you see that area of Torah is something that's uplifting, so you should spend time in that area, maybe more time in that area. And again, it's an interesting contrast to the traditional approach that this is what we learn, this is what is required. It may be difficult, but break your teeth on it, and you're obligated to do it. And Rav Kook is sensitive to the growth and spiritual growth of a person, and makes somewhat of a radical suggestion that if that's the area that you feel that you're growing in, that's really where you should be putting more of your learning time, of your learning effort. Okay, good. Interesting. Okay. Now, if we turn the page to the second side, we find something here which is also, I find, very interesting. The argument that Rav Kook makes for the importance of studying Kabbalah, mystical Torah. By the way, I'll just point this out. I've mentioned this in this class, in other classes that we've had together. When I was at YU, Yeshiva University, I don't remember a single sefer in the Beis Medrash or people studying Hasidic works, or you had the Brisker tradition and you had the Soloveitchik tradition. You study Gemara. I don't know, there was maybe a little bit of somebody giving a Musar shmooze or something along those lines, but there wasn't really study of other Sfarim, and certainly not Hasidic Sfarim, which is more of, again, these mystical ideas. Today at Yeshiva University, you find there's a tremendous amount of shiurim and the young men that are studying these works. And things have changed. Now, when Rav Kook is writing it, he's also writing at a time that people are not really studying this material, and it's very much a closed book. It's a bit taboo. In other words, that's not an area that you study, right? That's an area for spiritualists, for mystics. That's not for the average person. And here Rav Kook comes along and says, no, this is material that that should be open, certainly if it's something that people are attuned to and they find spiritually uplifting. And interesting that that's the direction that the Jewish world has taken. To some degree, when we're reading it out, this is not so much of a chiddush. It almost is it's kind of what's accepted. But here Rav Kook offers another reason why he believes mystical study, why studying more Kabbalah and more Hasidus is so important today, especially in our day. Rav Kook writes the following. This is from Orot HaTorah Perek Yud Yutet. Anu ro'im kishemabitim al ha'olam. Today, if you look at the world around us, l'shavto, and if we to make a judgment, mitzad ha'ashpa'a shel haniglot shebetorah levad. If we judge the world, this is the top of page 2. Its number says 15 on the top. So Orot HaTorah Yud Yutet. So if we judge the world around us, we judge the Jewish community around us, we know that we are living in a world today on the American scene, North American scene, where you have so many people that are not living a religious life, an observant life. Here in Israel also, they have the majority of the Jewish people not necessarily living a quote-unquote a Torah, a 613 commandment observance. So if you look at the world around us, and were you to make a judgment of that world around us based on the niglot shebetorah levad, if you based your judgment just on what's called the nigla, just of what we have sort of in the Chumash and the halachic works in the Gemara, below hashpata shel Torah Chesed, without the influence of a Torah of Chesed, hanova mimakor haskala elokit hatzvuna, that's really found in the inner dimensions of Torah, mitgadelet me'od midat hadin, then will be strengthened a judgment that is a midat hadin, which is a stern judgment, sinat habriot. It may even bring you to a kind of hatred of others, v'yeush mikol tzad. You're going to give up on everyone around you, on the situation. Now, what is he referring to here? I'm not sure if you kind of get the gist of what Rav Kook is referring to. But if we look at the Jewish world today, and a person looks at the Jewish world, he's writing in the early 1900s, certainly true today, and you judge everyone just based on what the halacha says. Now, it's interesting. The halacha speaks about hamechalel, someone who is mechalel Shabbos b'farhesya. The status of a Jew who is mechalel Shabbos b'farhesya. It's very problematic, by the way, sort of the status, the halachic status of that person. I was a rabbi in Mount Kisco. The majority of people were not Shomer Shabbos. Most people drove to shul on Shabbos. It's a whole question in terms of counting them for a minyan, in terms of giving them an aliyah. A Kohen in the shul that's married to a non-Jew, can that person duchen? Do they lose their rights as a Kohen in terms of giving them the first aliyah? These are very complicated questions in halacha, serious questions. And again, if you just look at the halachic, and that's what Rav Kook says, if you look at the nigla, if you look at just the halachic sources and the way that we interface and the way that we think about other Jews that are not shomer mitzvot, so if that's the only way that we judge them, as he says here, you may come to a midat hadin, you're going to judge in a harsh way. And it may be necessary to do that. Maybe the halacha requires that. Let me just read one more line. Ve'ein derech la'amod b'ma'amad nafshi mitubal b'kedusha b'dur. It would be difficult for us to live a life of kedusha in a dur shepiratzot rabod nizdamot bo, where you have so many Jews that are living in non-observant life, ki'im, unless be'itztarfut shel adaikanut ha'oleh me'ashpata shel Torah hanigled. Yes, we need to be precise and the precision of the Torah hanigled, what the halacha says. However, im chazda, but also with the chesed, ve'or panah, and the light of the Torah hatzvuna, the inner Torah, the secrets of Torah, she'az mit mazgim hachasadim. Then you have a synthesis of chesed v'agvura b'yachad ba'im lidei mituk, and that brings a sweetness. And what does that mean? It means that we need the inner Torah, we need the secret Torah, because what does the secret Torah tell us? What does the mystical Torah tell us? When that person that just got out of their car and walks into shul Shabbos morning. So if I'm just looking at the halachic work, so how do I view this person? So I have a lot of problems, right? I'm looking at him and it's not so easy. But if I open up the mystical works, it tells me this person has an neshama, right? This person has a yearning for Judaism. This person is connected to Am Yisrael. The person is connected to Hashem. They have a tzelem Elokim. So that changes the entire way that I relate to that person. So says Rav Kook, we need mystical teaching today, even more so. This is his argument. He says every Jew needs to be studying Chassidus. We need to be studying the Zohar, because the Zohar teaches us to don't look at the body. The Zohar says when you see another person, look at their neshama. That's how I see another person. I go straight to the neshama. So Rav Kook says we need this combination, and therefore every Jew needs to be studying Kabbalah. Every Jew needs to be studying Zohar according to, not just for the 40-year-olds that have studied all of Shas, everybody needs to do it according to Rav Kook. Radical position. Nobody ever said quite said it this way before. Yes, Harriet. It's terrible. Correct. Right. But I'll tell you what's interesting. Rav Kook doesn't just say you should study Kabbalah. He says you need, if you look at the language here, you need what he calls the daikanut ha'oleh mashpat shel Torah hanigleit. Yes, you need that as well. In other words, there is a halachic system. We're not going to break that down. Okay, there is a status, and we need to kind of find we need to find a compromise, or the right place between those two. Both exist, but Rav Kook says if it's only a world that's studying halacha, which is interesting if you think about it to some degree, sort of like a world that just studies Gemara and halacha, the way that they view people that are not religious. And to some degree, coming from that approach, that path, so it's hard, it's difficult, because the halacha says, the Rambam says, no, you can't, somebody who's a mechal shabbat farhesya doesn't have a full status of a Jew. That's what again, you have to work out those halachic issues, but it's a serious issue. Yes? Yeah. They are, yes. And they are relating to people in a different way, right. No, that's very good. Right. Hasidim? Yes. What's interesting about those two worlds is those two worlds study and they place great importance on the Zohar and those mystical ideas. Right. Right. But a world which is, I guess, the traditional Lithuanian world of learning Gemara and Halacha, that's very, very precise and very precise in terms of formulations of the status and category of Jews. So that's where Kook comes along. We have to find this balance and the importance, he says, of bringing Kabbalistic ideas, mystical ideas into our study, because in a generation, if we're not studying that way, as you said, we're going to lose that part of Am Yisrael. We're going to treat them in a way that's not appropriate. Yes? Right. To me, this is dramatic. Some of what we're reading now does not sound that dramatic because we're 100 years later. But he's introducing these ideas. For him to say, go and find the area of study of Torah that you find most meaningful, that's like, who would have said that 100 years ago? No, I never heard that growing up. I never heard it 40 years ago. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yes, Anna. No, I don't only mean the Zohar. Mystical includes a lot. I mean, I would say Hasidus is a good example of mystical works. They're all based on mysticism. A lot of them have moved away from using some of the Zohar terminology, which is more difficult. So the whole world of Hasidus, and you can understand what Rav Kook is getting at when he says we need to be studying more of that in terms of our interpersonal relationships. And what does Chabad do? Chabad classic, that's the movement, a Hasidic movement, which is really based on mystical ideas, that everyone walking into shul feels loved, and that's the whole movement is based on that idea. So that's, Rav Kook says we need to be studying mysticism, and again, you're right, there are many ways of interpreting that. There are mystical parts of the Torah itself. There are mystical ideas in the Mefarshim. There are mystical ideas that are found in Gemara. Classically, the Zohar and those works, and I would say the Hasidic works are are great examples of studying mysticism. Okay, so that is our, where are we up to? That was the third idea from Rav Kook. Fourth idea. And this is about, I found this interesting because one of the great sins or transgressions around Torah study is what's called bittul Torah. And that's something that you hear in yeshiva, to be mevatel Torah, bittul Torah, it's the worst thing, and it is a terrible thing. Bittul Torah means that you have an opportunity to study, and you're mevatel, that's zman. So is there anything positive that we could say about bittul Torah? I mean, I've never heard anything positive about it. So Rav Kook has one line, at least there's some positivity here in the next piece as well. So he writes, Yesh shehazmanim shemebatlim mehatorah. There are times where we're mevatel from Torah. Heim po'alim. They work for us. They're an advantage. Laha'ir et ha'inayim. That they light up our eyes. Lahakir. To recognize et tochen kiddushat HaTorah. That we can see the depth of holiness of Torah. V'omek ha'chayim shehi mashpia al lomdea. And that you can recognize the influence or the impact that Torah has on those that study it. And I think what Rav Kook is saying is that when we're not, it could be even in a sort of a positive sense, one goes on vacation, or one kind of steps away from their regular, kfiyat itim l'Torah. And when you do that, and one feels that I'm missing it, or I see that how much that brings to my life when I'm doing it, right? When I'm going to the SHIUR, I haven't gone in a while, and to kind of feel that and to reappreciate what it means to study Torah. So I think that's like a positivity. In other words, to take that, okay, you've missed your classes or you kind of fell out of your regular routine, but to see that, okay, I see how much I miss it. I recognize what that does for me when I'm doing it, and to come back to it with even greater vigor. I think Rav Kook is suggesting along those lines. Yes? Exactly right. Beautiful. Okay. That's right. You've been asmanim, and you need to recharge, and right, with that and recharging, that you come back with a greater sense of vigor and excitement. So bittul Torah, don't always see it as, Rav Kook always finds something optimistic, something positive to say. So even your bittul Torah, so use it as a springboard for more learning. And the next piece also relates to some degree to a kind of bittul Torah. And this is a Gemara. Actually, this piece we're going to look at is not in Orot Torah. It's found in Einayah. And it's based on, Einayah is a commentary on the Gemara. There's a Gemara in Brachos, Daf Chavches, and it says the following. Rabbi Zera ki havi chalish migirse. Rabbi Zera, when he got tired of learning, now even the Gemara shares with us that rabbis can get a bit tired. So he was no longer, able to learn, to concentrate. Havi azil v'yasiv apiska debei Rabbi Nassan bar Tovi. So he went and sat by the entrance of the Beis Medrash of Rabbi Nassan bar Tovi. Amar ki chalfei rabbanan. When the rabbis come in and out of the Beis Medrash, az ekum mikamayu. I'll stand up from where I'm sitting, ve'kabel igra, and I'll get reward. That's the Gemara. That's the Gemara again. This is Gemara. This is the bottom of page 2. The Gemara in Brachos, you have it on the left side in the Gemara, and then the translation. So what did Rabbi Zera do? It says he got tired. When he got tired and he couldn't really learn anymore, what did he do with that spare time? He sat by the entrance of the Beis Medrash. He could at least do the mitzvah of getting up and standing up for the Talmidei Chachamim, for the rabbis that were coming in and out of the Beis Medrash. So that's the Gemara. So Rav Kook has the following comment on the Gemara. And really just the first line or two from Rav Kook is what I want to highlight, and I think this is also a bit of a breakthrough for Rav Kook and when we think about Torah learning. Rav Kook writes, this is, if you see the very bottom of the page, Einayah. He first quotes the Gemara, and right after the bold, Kochot hanefesh, when you are strong, mitchaskim beyot kochot haguf shleimim ubriim. Actually, kochot hanefesh means the power of the nefesh. Here it refers to the mind. So they're strong when the body is strong. Beyot kochot haguf shleimim ubriim. Alkein. Therefore, katava Rambam. Therefore, the Rambam wrote, ki yeyot haguf shalem ubari. When the body is strong, when it's whole, hu midarche avodat hayotzer. That is considered to be a path of avoda of the Creator. Ki efshar l'tzayer muskal amiti. because you're not able to have clear intellectual thinking. V'sha'at hitchalshut kochot haguf harbe, if the body is weak. Okay, so this is something that is famous in Rav Kook's writings, and that is, and he writes this in Orot, he took a lot of heat for this when he wrote it in Orot, the importance of exercise, the importance of eating healthy, the importance of being healthy. And he says, and that's his comment on this Gemara, without getting into the rest of the comment here, but the comment on this Gemara is, he was chalash, he was weak. And what happens when you're weak? And why did he just continue learning? Well, why do you have to go sit by the base medrash and stand up for people? Just continue learning, kind of push through. But at some point, if you're not thinking clearly, and if your body's not strong enough, so your learning is going to be ineffective. So Rav Kook says that if we want effective learning, if we want effective avodat Hashem, and he quotes the Rambam, which is really beautiful, this line, that midarche avodat hayotzer, that having a healthy body is a path that's also considered when you're on the treadmill and when you're walking for exercise, that's also avodat hayotzer. That's an avodat Hashem as well when you do that. I had a friend, by the way, I'll take a comment, a friend that just got remarried. He was divorced and he just got remarried. Baruch Hashem, he married a very lovely woman, also happens to be a wealthy woman, nice to remarry a wealthy person. And he now for the first time in his life, he's my age, he now has a personal trainer. Because his wife has a personal trainer, so he now has a personal trainer as well. So he's had that the last 6 months. And I was just speaking to him on Friday, Erev Shabbos. He said, it's changed my life. It has changed my life. I'm telling everyone that they need, if they can afford it, that they should have a personal trainer. He says, I just feel so much stronger. I feel so much better. And I'm able to concentrate. And so that's what Rav Kook writes as well. Rav Kook writes the importance of exercise, to see that as part of your avodas Hashem, and to see that as part of your learning your Talmud Torah. The effectiveness of your Talmud Torah depends on your physical health as well. Yes, that's a breakthrough. You don't see this in, again, just to point out, I haven't seen this in any of the, again, it doesn't sound that novel, but it really is quite a breakthrough idea. Yes, please.
My friend said,
yes. Healthy body, healthy mind. We all know it today.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Yeah. I don't think that's what this Gemara is alluding to. Because Ramzera, he have a chamish midiyosei. Ramzera, he was learning for 10 hours straight.
Correct. No, I wasn't. No. If
He needed a break.
Good. No, if that was misunderstood, no, it doesn't mean that Rabbi Zera didn't exercise enough and that's why he was tired. No, I didn't mean that. Right, but he was tired. But Rav Kook he took it in that, exactly. He took it and to share that lesson, right? Not that Rav Zera, right? Correct. No, absolutely. That's not. No, 100%. No. That's not what Rav Kook meant. Okay, good. Very nice.
That's also related. It's really also related to the previous piece.
Yes.
Torah. In other words, he was exhausted from learning. He learned for many, many hours straight. Now he's going to take a break. But even when he took a break, he wanted to do something.
Oh, okay, that's a beautiful idea. Rav Kook writes that in the remainder of that, the remainder of his comment, that even when he couldn't learn, right? That's a beautiful idea for Rav Zera and for all of us. Right? If your head's not there and you're tired, but there are other mitzvah that you can do. That's what Rav Zera did. He found something else that he could also do in the world of learning. In other words, that he wanted to still do something that would help the world of learning and give honor to those that were studying. Absolutely, that's a beautiful. Exactly, he didn't just go off and exactly get into bed. Okay, so yes. Next piece. This is the top of page 3. I think we're moving along here. We're at the 6th or 7th idea here, and speaking about clarity, the clarity of learning. So this is the top of page 3. This is found in Orot Torah Tet Dalid, and there's a number 4, the joy when halacha is understood clearly. So I'll just preface this with a story that's found in Rabbi Soloveitchik's work Halachic Man. This is the top of page 3. There's a number 4 on the top as well. So in the work Halachic Man, there is a story of Rabbi Soloveitchik. He's a young man, I think really a boy, and he's in Chaslavich, and the custom was on Rosh Hashanah in Chaslavich that people would come back to shul in the afternoon, and before the mincha davening, for an hour or two, that people would sit and recite Tehillim, that the community would sit and recite Tehillim as in the afternoons of Rosh Hashanah. So Rabbi, or he wasn't Rabbi at the time, Yosef, Yashaber, little boy, so he came in and did the same thing. So his father, Moshe, came in and saw him with the Tehillim. He took the Tehillim from him, and he put a Gemara Rosh Hashanah in his hands and said, this is what you do on the afternoon of Rosh Hashanah. You don't say Tehillim, you learn about Rosh Hashanah. So this story he uses in the, Rabbi Soloveitchik uses in his work Halachic Man, to talk about the importance of study, that it's study and it's understanding of halacha and of Judaism that brings us the greatest meaning in mitzvot. Now, you could argue there are many things that can bring us great meaning around observing mitzvot. For the Briskers, and Rav Kook is going to make the argument here as well, the more that we understand things, the more that we understand Shabbat, the more that we understand the halachot, the more that we understand the Gemara and the analysis and everything around a mitzvah, that brings us the greatest meaning in performing the mitzvah. That's and interesting here, and I kind of bring this Rav Kook idea. This is not a spiritual idea. This is not a Kabbalistic idea. This kind of brings us back to a more traditional idea, and again, really where I saw it the first time in the writings of Rabbi Soloveitchik, that's the heart and soul of bringing meaning to our performance of mitzvot. The more that we learn, and I was thinking about that here in our class. Many of us have been together the last year, 2 years, whatever it may be. We've been studying a lot about Eretz Yisrael. I think studying about Israel, I mean, I can take you on a tiyul, and we kind of like talk about the beauty of Israel, but studying the sources and to see the Kedushat Haaretz and to see what it means, in all the sources, I think that brings us the greatest sense of meaning of performing a mitzvah. Let's look at the words of Rav Kook. Kefi ma shalachot hein mivorarot. The more that we understand the halacha, kach hein misamchot lev. The halacha actually, and again, interesting here because kind of the whole gist up to this point is kind of like moving away from the world of halacha. But here it says, you know what? The more that you understand the halacha, it actually brings great joy. Even though we normally think about halacha as something that kind of weighs us down and all the, the details of halacha. But Rav Kook says, no, the more halacha that we know, the more that we understand about the mitzvot and about our Jewish lives, it actually brings a great amount of joy. And I think it's very true. Misamchot lev osehen umazhirehen. To those that keep them and are careful of them. V'chesron beiruran. When we don't understand, there's something missing in terms of we kind of just have this kind of general idea about a mitzvah, but we've never really studied it. Right? What is it? And just coming off of last class, the minhag of dairy. I just heard the last 5 minutes of Rabbi Manning. Right? How beautiful. You spend an hour talking about it, then you go into Shavuos, and now you're eating your cheesecake and balintzas. It's one thing just to kind of do it, but to study it, to understand it, to see like a whole world around it, that's what brings great joy, and that's what Rav Kook says as well. The chesron beiruran, and when you don't have that understanding, b'yediyah beruah deveka b'nefesh, mevi lahargashat hachbada mikiyuma shel Torah. That's when you feel that Torah is weighty, and you're not very excited about Torah. B'diyuk b'pratei halachot. When you're not familiar with the law, the more that you're familiar and that you study the law, that you understand the laws, the halachot, the more meaning and the more joy that it brings. Interesting, he says that, and if you don't know it, one that never studies, then it could really, you could almost be, to use a language, to be turned off. You're turned off from those, but you've never studied them. You never went into depth. You never really looked, further than just, hearing about that halacha and just hearing about it and never really studying it carefully. So he says there's a danger there, the importance of studying halacha. So that's Rav Kook back in the traditional camp. Yes, Ari.
Sometimes we emphasize all the don't
Yes,
instead
yes.
of all
Yes, no, that's,
what you can do.
yes, absolutely. No, that's true as well. We need to study all the halachas about all the things that we're obligated to do. That's absolutely right. Okay. The next topic is sort of a big topic, but we'll just really put it in a sentence or two. And that is a term that's used, which is Torah Lishma. And I'm sure you've heard that terminology, to study Torah Lishma. Right now, that's what we're doing, right? Nobody forced you to be here. Is that right? Anybody getting a stipend for coming to this class? Not that I know of. I'm not getting one either. But so Torah Lishma. Torah Lishma, we're learning just Lishma. Lishma, by the way, what does Lishma mean? For the name. Literally, for the name of God, or for the sake of Torah. So what does Lishma mean? So Rav Chaim of Volozhin, so he wrote a sefer, and in that sefer, Nefesh HaChaim, he speaks about the Torah Lishma means that we study just for the sake of knowledge. In other words, that we want to know God's Torah. We want to know God's will. That's what it means, Torah Lishma. In the Hasidic world, there's another kind of Torah Lishma, and this is found in the Tanya, and the Baal Shem Tov speaks about it as well. Torah Lishma means that you're studying for the sake of being close to Hashem. Interesting, kind of like what we touched on before. That we're not just studying for the knowledge. Rav Chaim Volozhin really speaks about Torah in that sense, but that we study Lishma means for His name to get closer to Hashem, a devekus b'Hashem. Okay, so those are two ideas from the world of the Lithuanian world of Rav Chaim Volozhin and the Hasidic world. There's another Lishma that Rav Kook adds to this picture, or to this discussion of what it means. Echad mehadrachim, one of the ways, shal esek haTorah lishma. We speak about Torah lishma. What are we referring to? LaShir et Knesset Yisrael bekochot ruchaniyim gedolim. This is a very interesting idea, and here you'll see in a moment why this is so characteristic of Rav Kook. So this is page 3, right in the middle of the page, and it's number 4, where it says enriching the nation's spirit. Page 3, right in the middle of the page. What is Torah Lishma, according to Rav Kook? Or he adds this component, at least, of Torah Lishma. Why do we study? Because it enriches LaShir, in order to enrich et Knesset Yisrael, the kochot ruchaniyim. We want the Jewish people to be a more spiritual people. We have an obligation to one another. We have an obligation ourselves to study in order that we are knowledgeable and we bring that spirituality to the nation. And I would add here as well that what does it mean to bring spirituality to the nation? If you are knowledgeable in Torah, what does that afford a person? It affords a person the opportunity to share that with others. Torah Lishma means that I care about Torah, my study, that I have a sense of not only my obligation or my relationship with Torah, right? That's Chassidus says, study Torah because devekus b'Hashem. Rav Chaim Volozhin says, study Torah because you should know the will of God. Rav Kook says you should know Torah because you have an obligation to the company. You have an obligation to the organization. You need to be knowledgeable in Torah because you bring that spirituality to the nation. And I would say practically, if you know Torah, if you're knowledgeable, the more knowledgeable you are, you then share it with others. And that Rav Kook, again, Rav Kook is always concerned not only with yourself, but certainly, as we're going back to the land of Israel, with the nation as a whole. So he sees Torah learning in that context. Okay, and now we move into what is absolutely unique.
That's why
Yeah,
it's such a novel idea.
yeah,
Because the Torah Lishma of Chaim Volozhin and the others is individualistic.
very good. It's individualistic, and why is it individualistic? Because they were living more individualistic. Everyone's fighting to survive. Every community, every person is just trying to. So I'm trying to learn Torah and take care of my obligation, and do Torah Lishma the way that I can do it. So Rav Kook, for the first time, is talking about Torah Lishma in a wider context. As what? To the collective, exactly. To the collective. Beautiful. Okay. So we have, what's that? Yes. Very nice. All right, so now we're going to see I think we're in our last 3 pieces, last 3 ideas. And here, we cannot talk about Rav Kook and Talmud Torah unless we talk about, and that would be the first thing, were you to wake me in the middle of the night and say, what does Rav Kook say about Talmud Torah, or what might he say about how Torah study in the land of Israel is a different Torah study? And that we don't really have others speaking about. As Rabbi Safran has just suggested, living in that world, I'm not sure if that's going to be the first topic that you're going to speak about when it comes to Talmud Torah. But Rav Kook is going to talk a lot about the idea that only in the land of Israel does one study Torah in the most authentic way. In the most authentic way. So look at what Rav Kook writes. This is Orot Torah. This is number 7. Orot Torah, it's found Yud Gimel Zayin. Knesset Yisrael B'chala. The Jewish people as a whole. Chaya, they live, b'chutz la'aretz, outside the land of Israel. Chayim she'einam mikoriyim. It's not the real life of a Jew outside the land of Israel. Very good. Authentic. It's not the authentic Jewish life. I was just talking to my wife this morning about, there was a beautiful video that was going around of a Birchas HaGomel that one of the soldiers that went in and saved the hostages that he recited in front of hundreds of soldiers. Did you see that? So I said, that's like the Torah idea of fighters and of courageous soldiers. Like we had Avraham that went to war and David HaMelech that went to war. Right, our greatest tzaddikim are people that went to war, that led battalions into battle. And we're coming back to the land of Israel in this, and we're trying to we're not sure exactly what this is. We're and to see that, right, that's a taste of the Torah, of the Bible, of biblical figures that tzaddikim that lead us in war and make a bracha afterwards, recite Tehillim afterwards. Something that we haven't seen in 2,000 years. So Rav Kook says, when you talk about the Jewish people outside the land of Israel, it's not the authentic Jewish people. We're not seeing, it's a beautiful Jewish people, it's a Jewish people, but it's not she'ena mikoriyim. It's not the real thing. It's not the authentic Jewish people. The Kal Vachomer, and even the Kal Vachomer, how much more so, she'talmidei chachamim. And again, I'm not sure if the talmidei chachamim outside of Israel would necessarily want to hear this from Rav Kook. But he says that the great rabbis outside of Israel, sheyesod chayim hu chayim ruchaniyim, their lives are spiritual lives. Haseichel, hadeya, haregesh, hakdusha, v'tara. But shebechutz la'aretz, but that outside the land of Israel, einam yecholim lekabel or chayim mikoriyim. They're not receiving that spirituality in its most pristine, in its most pure way. So learning Torah in the land of Israel is unique. It's authentic. It's most authentic. There was a piece, and I just came across this piece from Rabbi Yosef, who was the chief rabbi, Zatzal, the chief Sephardic rabbi, one of the most important personalities of the last 50 years in Israel. So he has a long article about the question of, is there a mitzvah to live in the land of Israel? I mean, that's been discussed by everyone. Is there a mitzvah? Can we say that there's an obligation to live in the land of Israel? So his maskana is, yes, based on all the sources, there is a mitzvah. No doubt, there is a mitzvah to live in the land of Israel. But then he says, even for those that say that there is not a full-fledged mitzvah, there's not a mitzvah, he says the following, but there's a mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Everybody agrees the mitzvah to study Torah, and the most authentic study of Torah is in the land of Israel. So you're obligated to come to the land of Israel to study Torah authentically. That's what he writes in this article. So Rav Kook writes that as well. If we want Torah study in its most pure, in its most authentic, it's only here in the land of Israel. Again, it's a spiritual idea. And he writes, it's impossible for this unity, perfect unity and wholeness, that comes, which emanates from God, and God is here. God's presence is here in the land of Israel. It's just impossible for that to develop, for that to open up outside of the land of Israel. Okay. And one other thing along these lines, Orot HaTorah Yud Gimel Hey, Hi Eina Muchrachat La'arich B'Pilpul. There's something else, and this is also maybe a bit of a radical idea of Rav Kook. Outside the land of Israel, do you know what you need? You need pilpul. Now, what does anybody know what pilpul is? Pilpul means like a lot of discussion, a lot of analysis, right? A lot of back and forth. If you study every page of Talmud, would you call that there's a lot of pilpul on the page? To some degree, yes. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of complex discussion. He says, "He eno muchracha la'arib b'pilpul laman amidah lacha brura." Here in the land of Israel, that's not necessary. He maseget et ha'emet. The person is able to know the truth. V'tatochen hazach ha'pnimi miziv pnimiyuto hachusha eloki. That one can just sense it. Uhameir al yoshvei admat kodesh. And what is he referring to here? He's referring to Ruach HaKodesh, and he's referring to Nevuah, prophecy. His prized Talmud, Reb David Cohen, the Nazir, and we're going to be reading about the Nazir. There was a Nazir here in Yerushalayim. He passed away in 1970, a very, very holy man. He wrote a book called Kol HaNevuah, the sound or the voice of prophecy. And he argued that now that we're back in the land of Israel, we can now once again, after 2,000 years, we can begin to receive prophecy once again here in the land of Israel. We need to prepare for that and work towards that. Rav Kook says, you know why there's so much argument on every page of the Talmud? Why there's so much complexity? Because they didn't have Ruach HaKodesh. Because outside the land of Israel, you do not have clarity of thought. We always thought of a page of the Talmud as the most beautiful thing, all that complexity. Rav Kook says, no, it's not so beautiful. He says, if you look at the Yerushalmi, which is written here, you don't have that complexity. You have, it's straight, it's forward, because people are receiving, they're understanding things in a pure way, in a decisive way. It's only when you're outside the land of Israel and you don't have the influence, you don't have the presence of Hashem, and you don't have that purity of Ruach HaKodesh, that you have all that what he calls the pilpul. Okay, yes, please. Yep.
Even if it has truth
By the way, I believe everything that Rav Kook says has truth. Now it could be I just want to point that out. He's a person that he has. In other words, he has everything in his palm. In other words, he has everything in his hand. He has all of Zohar. He has all the poskim. He has all, and he's using that. He's giving to us in a line, but he has all of that great Torah learning in every word. Yeah. No, I know you right. Yeah.
The overwhelming majority, one could say probably 90% of all of the quote-unquote Torah that we have.
Right. No, that's right.
Emanates from
Correct.
Let's just talk about the time of the Rishonim.
Correct.
What Rishon lived in
But we didn't have Eretz Yisrael. But he believes once we have Eretz Yisrael. No, you're absolutely right. But we've had 2,000 years without Eretz Yisrael. So all the great works, all the Rishonim, all the Achronim, the Vilna, everybody, yes, is producing outside the land of Israel. But Rav Kook would say that they would have produced something that much greater would they have been in Eretz Yisrael. Okay. So that's, yes, please.
Could one say, for example, that Vilna Gaon could have produced greater than he produced?
Well, Rav Kook writes, and he alludes to it here, but he writes that the Talmud Bavli is flawed. The Talmud Bavli, the way that we have it, is not ideal. And if you compare it, he makes a comparison to the Talmud Yerushalmi, and you'll see the difference in style. It's not just a difference in style, it's a difference in influence. Because it was written Be'eretz HaKodesh, it was written where there's clarity, so it's a Gemara that has clarity. The Bavli is written in a place without clarity, and that's why every page of Talmud is so difficult. Okay.
The Talmud Bavli has the clarity, and the Talmud Yerushalmi has no clarity, even historically.
Okay.
They had to rush.
Okay, good. Right. So that's a theory, yes. But Rav Kook, this is Rav Kook's argument. No, this is Rav Kook's argument. We could take it or leave it. Okay, and the last teaching, we'll close with this. This is page 4, and we have covered 10 ideas, I think original ideas of Rav Kook about Talmud Torah, which you do not hear from the typical gadol, so to speak. And here he writes the following. This is found in Orota Torah, Yud Gimel Chet, page 4, and the rebuke of scholars. We actually touched on this for those that were here last week, but we'll see it fresh. Yeah. So he writes that the scholars of Eretz Yisrael require a lot of musar. The musar nimratz v'gadol tzrichim chachmei Eretz Yisrael. He writes that they need to be rebuked. Those rabbis living in the land of Israel. We have to give them a great rebuke. Now, what rebuke is he referring to? That's surprising for Rav Kook to say that we have to rebuke great rabbis of Israel. I thought we just said all the rabbis of Israel are above and beyond. But he says, Aval tochen ha-musar hazeh, but the musar that I want to give them, hofchi hu mikol musar nahug shabalam. This is just the opposite of the musar that's generally given. And what's the musar that's generally given? And you can look at the rest of this on your own. The musar that's generally given, says Rav Kook, is that one needs to be humble, one needs to be an anav, and that people have too much ego, that people are too confident, And that's one of the classic Musar ideas. Rav Kook says, I have to give just the opposite Musar to those rabbis in the land of Israel, and that is that they don't believe enough in themselves and what they are to bring to the Jewish world. They're treating themselves, they think of themselves like regular rabbis of the Galut, says Rav Kook. That they don't have the confidence and to know that they are now living in the land of Israel. They now are in tune with a kind of Ruach HaKodesh and a heightened spirituality, and they have a tremendous amount to give to the Jewish world. Now let's read this one line so we'll see it. Mimin zeh hinam tamidei chacham b'shev Eretz Yisrael. There are great rabbis in Israel. Kol hatzar olami v'kal v'chomer kol tzar omek v'ayam shel knesset Yisrael. They feel all the burden, the pains of Israel. Hineu mudba ba'omek libam levavam. And they feel that deep in their heart. V'chatum al nishmatam. Ad she'enam yecholim listakel b'toch tocham al atzmam lahakir et gedulatam v'tifartam. They're not recognizing their greatness and their glory. Et ziv hechsher chachmatam. That they have a particular light and potential in their chachma. Ve'et adinut rucham. And they have an adinut that they are, how do you translate adinut? That they're very good, refined. V'taharat hargasham. They have a certain tara. Chayavim hem b'nei Eretz Yisrael. B'yuchud chachameh. L'chapes v'limtso b'kirbam et yitronam. They need to see their great value. And yitronam means even more, right? Yeter, more than those living outside the land of Israel. Hayonek, where do they get it from? Where are we all getting it from? Mital eretz chemda. That there's a dew in the land of Israel. There's a spirituality here in the land of Israel. But here I want to end with this. And he doesn't just say the chachameh. He says, Chayavim hem b'nei Eretz Yisrael. How do you translate that? It is an obligation for all b'nei Yisrael. That means you and me. Rav Kook is saying that every Jew living in Israel studying the Torah, that we need to see the great potential that we have and a special blessing that we have in our learning in the land of Israel, to recognize that and to take advantage of that. So I think that's a nice closing message from Rav Kook for all of us. The schus that we have, and it's not only the schus, but the blessing that we have, and that we should see blessing in our learning in terms of how it transforms us as people, how we can give to others, how we can be a light to others, in inspiration to others here in Israel, outside of Israel, the kind of religious lives that we're living, the Torah that we're learning. And Rav Kook believes in this great potential that we have as Am Yisrael. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we should continue to see that. We saw a little bit of light this Motzei Shabbos. As I came out of shul, somebody ran over to me before I even got home and said, "Did you hear about the hostages?" The hostages, and all of us felt uplifted. We should continue to feel that and to see that and to see Be'ezrat Hashem things turn around, and peace and nechama and geula shlema b'mehera v'yameinu. Amen. I wish everyone a tomorrow night, Chag Sameach. Chag Sameach. Everyone have a wonderful Shavuos.